I am not an anti-feminist. In light of a couple of videos I've made recently on race and sex, and in a way to preface some videos which may be upcoming on those topics, I wanted to clarify my position a little bit. Also, I want to make sure that I don't alienate or upset anybody who considers themselves to be a feminist, who adopt that label. There are many well-meaning people who adopt the label feminist, and I don't want a series where I discuss reasonable people versus extreme feminism to insult those people and maybe make them feel compelled to insult me in kind. So I thought I would clarify that. Now, part of the reason that I'm not an anti-feminist is I'm not even sure what the term means. I'm certainly not opposed to the dictionary definition of the term feminist, and I'm sure that most of the well-meaning people who consider themselves to be feminists would adopt that definition for the term. Unfortunately, in many places, including academia, it has taken on many other meanings beyond that, and there is a little bit of an ideological infighting involved in the feminist movement. Someone said tongue-in-cheek on one of my recent videos, you do know that choice feminism isn't real feminism, and of course that's some of the infighting that we're talking about. In fact, one of the figures that I mentioned, Germaine Greer, is actually a contentious figure within feminist circles. Even though she has a lot of things to say which would tend to go along with mainstream feminism, she's got some more radical views, and that's another thing. Someone had challenged me on my use of the term radical, radicalized, and extreme feminism. And I would say that I'm using these terms in the broader sense, basically meaning that these are attitudes and opinions expressed that are not in keeping or not in step with the majority of mainstream society. Someone else had said on one of my videos that they can't think of any men that they know of who are opposed to equality, and I think that's an important distinction to make as well. I'm also very cautious about adopting labels. Some of you who've been with me for a while know that. I would much rather have the opportunity to express my position to you than to have to use a single word descriptor to define it, which may or may not actually be that relative to my particular position. And we don't seem to give one another that much courtesy in the public space to really define our positions carefully. I don't write people off. If someone tells me that they're a feminist, I haven't written them off at that point. In fact, Gary Edwards had started a comment on one of my videos by saying, I'm in the feminist camp. There was no part of me that read that part of the comment and went, okay, let's get ready for battle. Here's someone I'm writing off, and I'm going to get ready to deal with them accordingly. I was open-minded to hear what he had to say, and actually what he had to say I agreed with. I didn't have a problem with that. I suspect he's probably a feminist in the traditional sort of dictionary definition of the word. No problem with that. I haven't actually even written off Germaine Greer, even though she says a lot of crazy stuff. I don't think that's healthy to the discourse to write people off because you have ideological differences with them. But I did want to sort of express my position. If I had to give it a name, I guess I would call it egalitarian. Although, I'll admit, it feels a little bit strange to have to even give it that name. It feels like I'm putting on a coat when I'm already warm. It's the way I've lived my entire life. And I will say, my exposure to other people and other conditions in the world, having traveled some, has informed me how fortunate I am to have had the upbringing that I did. I was fortunate enough to be born to a couple of parents who they just don't make race and gender an issue. They never have. They never made a point of pointing out someone's race and stereotyping them or anything like that. If someone was a good person, they praised and lauded that person with all the praise that person deserved as an individual. If someone was a bad actor, they would talk about that person's shortcomings as an individual, and they didn't try to link it to anything. So it just wasn't part of my experience to consider things like sex and race. I wasn't exposed to the culture in the form of media for quite a number of years either because we didn't have electricity. And in terms of the school system, I did enter the school system late. I was homeschooled for a number of years first. And when I finally did enter the school system, it was a very small, like a 4-room schoolhouse in a very remote area. And I was, I think, more probably concerned with how I was being bullied than to notice some of the other cultural undertones that may have been taking place. I'm not even sure. I think I was a little bit distracted because I happened to be the kid in the school that was bullied and picked on, and so I may not have had that much of an attention span for other things. But this was my upbringing, so I did not grow up with any kind of negative connotations with regards to race and sex. In fact, if I was to admit a bias, it's probably towards the feminine. If I'm going to have a meaningful discussion with someone, in general, I sort of prefer that it be a woman. I feel more comfortable in those environments. That's not to say, of course, that I haven't had some of the most rewarding discussions of my life with men. It's just sort of a personal preference that I have. When it comes to race, if I was to admit anything, it would be a very slight bit of discomfort in my early adulthood, and that all has to do with exposure. The school that I went to was in a remote area, and there may have been there were a few Native Canadian kids amongst the rest of us, which were pretty much all Caucasian. There was a huge cracking noise over there. Hope everyone's okay. Anyway, I wasn't really exposed to people of that many different races early on in childhood. So in my early adulthood, as I started to expand my horizons and travel a little bit, I felt a little bit of discomfort being around people who weren't like me. But of course, as time went on, that wore away, and I certainly don't feel anything towards anyone of any different race anything differently. I would treat people as I would hope to be treated, as individuals by the content of their character rather than anything else. And I want to make it clear that I absolutely adore, admire, and respect women, but not all of them. I believe in merit, and of course that means treating people as individuals and judging them by their own character. So I hope this clarifies things. Again, really the main point I wanted to make in this video is that I don't find labels all that useful. I will talk about extreme feminists and radical feminist ideologies and radical tenets of modern feminism, third wave feminism. But this is not meant to demonize individual people necessarily. This is not meant to insult individual people who consider themselves to be feminists. And that is also not to say in any way, shape, or form that I don't think that equality is an important goal. I think it is. I think we lack equality right now, and I think we lack equality in many different ways. One of the quotes from Germaine Greer is that she's more of a liberation feminist. She's not an equality feminist. And she talks about liberation of women and how it hasn't happened yet. And the question I would love to ask Germaine Greer, if I were able to speak to her in person, is liberation from whom or from what? Because I think in some ways we could all use some liberation. In any case, I'm going to leave it there for now, and I do have a video scheduled to be uploaded in the next few days on this topic. So, you know, I'm talking about specific tenets and specific attitudes and behaviors. If those aren't part of your lexicon, well, then I'm really not talking about you. So I hope that we can have a productive discussion. I have had some productive discussions with some people who consider themselves to be feminists in the comments section of my videos. I value that very much because I think that's where we make some progress. That's where this tool, as I've referred to it in other videos, really, really shines, is that ability to speak with people that we never would have spoken to otherwise. So thanks as always for listening. Have a good day.